Welcome to the February 23rd, 2016 meeting of the Board of Selectmen. As we do each meeting, we want to let people know that this meeting is being recorded. And also, as we do each meeting, we want to take a moment of silence and appreciation for our brave servicemen and women that are serving around the world, especially in troubled areas of the Middle East. Okay, thank you. First of all, we want to welcome, we have an Eagle Scout candidate here from Troop 89. Welcome to the Selectmen's meeting. At 7 o'clock, we have Energy Manager Andrew Seaman here to discuss proposal for Medfield to own their own streetlights. And then the rest of our meeting will be reviewing the many warrant articles that will be coming up at the town meeting at the end of April. So maybe, Andrew, we can go right to you.
Thank you. So I wanted to give you guys an update about where we are with looking at converting the streetlights to LEDs. This was a project that was identified by the Energy Committee as a project with a quick payback, relatively low cost in comparison, and provides a very significant energy savings for the town.
You don't have an extra one of these, maybe? Can we
Did I not give you one?
Yeah, no, I just, maybe they can have one, they can follow one. Do you have an extra one? So you can use that there. Thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Great, no, I think I don't have mine now. Oh, there it is. I got it. All right. So right now, current status is that Eversource owns all 347 lights in town. Right now, they're unmetered, so that means that we pay for the lights based on 4,200 hours of use every year, and that's whether the lights are on, whether they're off. Some of the photosensors have gone, and they're they don't turn on and light properly. So we're paying for them no matter what. It's a fixed rate. On top of the electric use, there's an additional maintenance cost per fixture, which is a significant charge between $60 and $110 per fixture. That is for Eversource for maintenance and also for depreciation on their equipment. Last year we used 104,000 kilowatt hours, and cost the town $41,000. So the first option is to do nothing. It doesn't provide any cost savings, and continues the responsibility for the fixtures on Eversource. And unfortunately, I believe they are not exactly responsive for fixing their fixtures. As I'll get into a little bit later with the maintenance contract, they're required in the contract to have a response time of 3 to 5 days to replace any of the equipment. So that's something to consider. Second option is to purchase the lights from Eversource for a bargain basement price of $1. The reason it's $1 is because the fixtures are very old. They're past their useful life, and they've depreciated enough where Eversource has made their money back on them. So they consider it a sunk cost. They want to get rid of it, get it off their books, and leave it at that. What that would do immediately, if we were just to purchase the lights, just that, we would save $17,000 to $18,000 a year, because we would not have to pay the maintenance cost of the $60 to $100 per fixture that we pay to them now. But it would be the town's responsibility to maintain these fixtures, and annual maintenance contracts with a local company. There's about 4 or 5 of them that do business in the area that other towns have had great success with. For the existing sodium, high-pressure sodium lights, it'd be about $5,000 per year. And the response time, again, is in that contract of 3 to 5 days. The third option is to purchase the lights and convert to LEDs, and this will provide the greatest savings of approximately $31,000 per year. So that means annual expenses would be about $6,200 for electricity, and the maintenance contract, because they are LEDs and they require less maintenance, would be much lower at about $2,000 to $3,000. On all the fixtures, the manufacturers provide a 10-year warranty, and they're designed to last 23 years. So about the maintenance contract, a couple of the companies, there's one in Woburn, Covilo Electric, also Seaman's, which is a big worldwide name. They have a local office here that does a lot of streetlight maintenance and installations. Many towns have gone with them. Again, the response time with 3 to 5 days. And if there's any emergencies, if the police say, well, this is, like there's a fixture is hanging down or something about to fall, they consider that an emergency. Their emergency response time is 2 hours in order to come and fix that. Right now, nearby communities of Medway, Natick, and Westwood have all converted LEDs and are under contract for maintenance, and they've had no issues.
And Westwood actually got a grant from the state of almost $250,000, I think.
They did get a grant from the state to do that, and that was because they're a green community.
Yeah.
And they were able to get all that funded because of their green community status.
So Andrew, was that their initial Green Communities Act grant?
Unfortunately,
That was a competitive one.
the initial money that you get for becoming a green community cannot be used for converting LED streetlights. I don't know why, that's just the terms of that grant.
Yeah.
Only the next competitive bids, awards.
So Westwood probably got something similar to what we would get if we became a green community, which was $148,000.
Yes.
And then in addition to that, they've gotten this $250,000 or so to do the
That's
LEDs.
correct. Yep, so it just, again, that just, highlights the benefits of.
We
being
should
a
do
green
that.
community. Thank you. I just want to highlight a couple of, the next couple of slides, there's some in color. I apologize that the color printer wasn't working. So, LED benefits, again, we all know they're high cost savings. The prices come down tremendously. Low life cycle costs over 20 years. It also provides a bright natural light. You can tell these lights here in this room are LEDs. I think it's, it looks like the sun's out. It's a nice bright light, and that'll make an improvement in the roadway, increase safety for pedestrians and for traffic as well.
You can actually, when you go on, because I just did it the other night, on Village Street, Medway has the LED lights, which then you go into Millis and it's like light to dark.
It's immediate difference. Yeah, you notice it. The other benefit is that it limits the amount of pollution in the light as well, because the light is directed more down instead of being sort of an omnidirectional. The light is also, there's a lot of light bleeding up from the existing fixtures, and this is directed more in a more focused area. So during the computer outage we had about 3-4 weeks ago, I went around and mapped all the streetlights that we had in town, and that image right there is where you can see the majority of the lights are on Main Street and South Street, Spring Street. About 78 lights are on Main Street. And then you have some scattered throughout different subdivisions and other main intersections. The idea is to light the intersections for for safety. So you have a few scattered here and there.
Just to give a real quick history lesson on the reason most of them are not in the subdivisions anymore is when Proposition 2.5 came in 1980, one of the things the town thought they could save money was to cut out some of what they called non-essential streetlights. And so streetlights that were not on a safety road, a main road, on an intersection, a bad curve, we removed about 1/3 of all the streetlights in town. Many of them were in subdivisions. There was some negative feedback on that, but it was a way, because we were under Proposition 2.5, we had to make some of those cuts.
Sure.
So that's why the bulk of them are on, in fact, everyone should be either on a main highway, safety roads, bad intersection, that type of thing.
Yeah, and there are some. You can see there are some scattered ones, lingering throughout on some, very remote, close to a cul-de-sac or dead ends of some subdivisions. So, so we're able to identify all these and compare the list to the inventory we got from Eversource, and we're off by about 2 to 3 fixtures. I still got to confirm. What that is, but we still might be able to get a rebate from them. We should be able to get a rebate because we've been paying for these additional fixtures for so long. But that's another topic. The next page would be great if it was in color, so we can just skip that. But as you can see, like Mr. DeSorga, you say when you're driving from Medway to Millis, you see the immediate difference. Again, enhancing pedestrian safety. And also in Provincetown, the amount of light pollution, you can kind of see it with that image. You can see that it's just a you don't see the light coming up from the town as much. It's not bleeding over. So here's the big question: is the cost? The initial cost would be $104,864. Incentives from the utilities would be $16,000, with a total project cost of $88,000, and payback of 2.5 years. If you want to get more into the details, a net present value of $163,000, which is a pretty good number. Now, how do we pay for it? Well, we were throwing around some different options. Obviously, bonding is one option, but borrowing from the stabilization fund could be another option. That will require a warrant article, and may be too late for this town meeting to do. But that would also require additional warrant articles for the next 3 years to transfer money from the operating budget of the streetlights into the stabilization fund. So basically, using the savings to pay for that. We could also appropriate the entire amount for this fiscal year, and that is before the warrant committee now to see what they think about it.
Okay.
So, and then of course bonding, but I don't know, for 90 grand, I think we probably find other ways to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you have any questions, I can answer those, hopefully.
Mark, questions?
So tell me a little bit about some of these towns that have gone to LEDs. You mentioned Medway, Natick, and Westwood. How long have they been in, done the switchover and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, a lot of them have been doing them. I mean, a lot of towns started, 5-6 years ago when the technology was still kind of, becoming developed, and it's not as mature as it is now.
Yeah.
And so I know Westwood recently did it. I live in Norwood, and I drive there, and all of a sudden one night I'm like, holy smokes, there's bright LEDs. It was great.
Yeah, because I think downtown, because I noticed that too.
Yeah, and they also they have all the ornamental lights, the post top fixtures as well, and those all got converted as well.
Converted to that.
Yeah. Boston has done it. They just completed phase 3.
Okay.
They were doing that in stages. And everyone's seen, savings of, 60-70%, depending on the kind of fixtures they put in.
Any other questions, Mark?
No, it's just something I've got to just kind of mull over, I think, a little bit too, and kind of look at some of the things to kind of get an idea.
Yeah.
Because I'd be kind of curious, like, if you were able to get some information, any towns that have been doing it for a while. Well, it's kind of feeling new anyways, but the ones that have been doing it the longest, to kind of get an idea of what their long-term experience is.
Sure.
Not just the initial year or so, but what have they run into for, have they run into any unexpected costs or things like that? They hadn't quite figured out anything like that. With taking over responsibilities.
Sure.
And Pete?
I think this is absolutely something whose time has come. $31,000 a year savings, we absolutely should do it as soon as we can. You get the savings, you get the better light, the safer environment for all the residents and users of the town. It's a no-brainer. And I'd like to have the town do it as soon as we possibly can.
Okay.
I just had a couple questions on the annual maintenance cost. You said it'd be roughly $5,000 a year. How did you come up with that figure?
The $5,000 a year that's a very high estimate, actually.
That was on the option 2.
That was on option 2, where we would still have the existing fixtures, and because they require more maintenance, the cost is higher. It turns out to be about $1 to $1.20 per fixture per month. So that turns out to, doing the math, is somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000. I just put $5,000 as a worst case scenario.
But that, my only question is, that would be very hard, I would think, to try to come up with a figure on, not knowing whether you have a lot of bad storms or something, and no?
Well, see, that's the thing, though. If we were to own these lights,
Yeah.
okay, we would be responsible for maintaining and repairing them, but that's where the maintenance comes in, and they are responsible for replacing the fixtures and for doing the general maintenance on them. So the other, yes, if a storm comes, a fixture breaks,
Yeah.
we would be on the hook for replacing that.
So then, is that a typical, well, actually, you bring it down to
With LEDs, about $3,000.
3,000. That would be an annual fixed rate so that whatever the service is needed during that year, that maintenance
Yes,
crew.
so that,
And it's an outside maintenance crew that would be interviewed and hired.
that's correct. And let me get back to the maintenance contract slide here. So it covers outages, repairs, storm damage, pole transfers. A pole transfer is if like the utility needs to replace a pole,
Yeah.
then everybody that's on the pole, the cable company, everybody has got to come in and do their thing,
Right.
and that would cover that.
So are these maintenance costs, did you come up, did you research from other towns?
Yes, these
or-
are numbers from MAPC, from DOER, from other towns.
Okay.
These are the costs, and actually, I was just on the phone with Seaman's this afternoon, and they said, you're looking, at maximum $1 for if you were to own the fixtures and not have LEDs, maximum of 50 cents per fixture per month if you were to have LEDs.
So this would be a contract the town would sign with this
Yes, you
contractor to
typically-
handle the maintenance?
Correct, and typically it's a 3-year contract. You usually have the option to renew for another 2 years. So these are fixed costs.
So the town would not have to supply town vehicles to
Nope.
trucks to
Nothing.
lift people? That would all be covered under the maintenance?
That is correct, including police detail as well would also be covered. They take care of everything, coordinating with utilities if they need to do anything in that respect.
I think on the surface, I agree with Pete, it makes a lot of sense because you're saving money. I think I just would have a couple of questions. If you're trying to get it for this town meeting, I think I would like to have some discussion with Medway, Natick, and Westwood,
Sure.
just to see, what are the pros, what are the cons? Rather than reinvent the wheel, is there something you would have done different? Is there a negative to this? It certainly financially appears to be a good deal. The other question I just would have would be whether the concept is something that town meeting should vote on versus the Board of Selectmen.
As far as purchasing the fixtures,
Just
or
the whole concept to go to LED.
from other towns is, other towns have not needed to go to town meeting. It just requires a selectman vote to purchase the fixtures.
But I just, maybe that's the Democrat with a small G in me.
Mhm.
Just, because I know way back, actually, every time a street light came in, that had to be voted at town meeting.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a major issue. I think you would get very much support, but I'm almost thinking this is beyond our authority a little bit in my own thinking, that this is something the townspeople, I think, should vote on. Is this what the town wants versus the selectmen just putting it into a budget? Naturally, the people could defeat the budget if they didn't like it, but I just like the idea of the townspeople at town meeting having to say, yes, this is something Medfield wants to do, and we're gonna vote it through, and then it goes on to the budget with that. That's just kind of my opinion on that.
Well, it is a big change, obviously, right, because we'd be owning them instead of just leasing them out. And the maintenance contract, really like $2,000 to $3,000 a year?
It's not much. No, it doesn't require much because, well, especially for the LEDs,
Yeah,
because if it fails and
yeah,
it's under a 10-year warranty,
yeah.
so you get the fixture back from the manufacturer, and the maintenance company is already contracted to replace faulty fixtures.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you've done a tremendous job, and I just commend you that you're constantly trying to find ways that, one, we can save money, it's good for the environment, it just makes sense. So I
Yeah.
just want to commend you.
Thanks.
You've come back time and again. I think this is just another example of something that I think is good for the town. So
Okay.
I have no opposition, and I fully support.
Sure.
I just have a couple of things I think I would like to hear from some of the other towns that have gone that route, just to see if there's a downside to that.
Mhm.
In my own mind, I think it's something, because it is so different, I would like the people of the town to say, yes, this is something we want, rather than 3 members of the Board of Selectmen putting it in.
Right.
And as I say, the
No.
people at town meeting could still defeat it, and they do have the say indirectly
Sure.
with that.
Yeah, and I can see the sense of where you would want to have town meeting approval. You don't want to have the people feel like this is just being pushed on them, and this is something they're living with every day. So-
I think
so
the town would
that-
support
That's
it.
kind of
I think
that's
the
the
town
issue
would
I see.
support it.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting is, and it's bothered me, is that there are a lot of streetlights that are out a lot.
Yeah.
And I raised this issue with the chief of police, and he is working with his crew, that as they see a light out,
Yeah.
that they're reporting that, and they're keeping track of that. And Christine on the website has the number, there's a number that Eversource has that you can call. But even with that, there's still a lot of lights out. Now, we actually had an Eagle Scout that came to me a couple of weeks ago, and he's looking to do a project, and I'm actually gonna send him to you, because you've done a lot of research for him, because his question was, where are the streetlights, and how many are there? And what he was thinking of doing is, with these 347 streetlights, is sending a letter and contacting someone that lives near that streetlight, and see if they'd be willing to adopt the streetlight. Come up with some little fancy adoption paper. And then that person simply, when that light went out, that person would then be responsible, or would agree, they would immediately call. One, it's protecting their neighborhood, because the only streetlights that are left are for safety, and reasons. They're not just frivolous lights. Those were removed under Proposition 2.5. So the lights that are there are important, and they're important for the safety, not only of that neighborhood, but anyone else that's driving nearby. So his idea was, if you get that person to adopt it, and it's nothing, I mean, they would volunteer to do that, and would kind of, make a sheet so that, they felt they had kind of ownership.
Yeah.
And then when they saw that was out, because right now, we're paying for that light and getting zero service from it.
Exactly. We're getting nothing.
And there's a lot of lights out. I mean, I counted the other day at least 25 as I drove around. So multiplied by, I don't know what the cost per year per light
$60 to
is.
$100 per year, did you say?
What is it?
Yeah, I mean, and that's just for the maintenance.
But how, for the actual
For the
light?
actual electricity, for the electricity,
No, well, I don't know the electricity, but we're paying them per light, are we not?
yes, we are.
Yeah.
Just a
We are paying them, yeah, I mean, and it
What's the
turns out,
fee- What's the fee we're paying them per light, do you know?
per light, for maintenance and depreciation is between $60 and $100 per light.
$1,600 per light?
Well, if you figure it's,
60 to 100.
Okay.
if you figure the 41,000 per year and the 347 lights, if it
Right.
was 410 lights, then it would be, we're paying them $100 a light
So
per
you're looking at
year.
110, 120 per light with the electricity, yeah.
Well, it's not huge amounts of money, but we're paying money and not getting a service for it. I don't think
Yeah.
that's right.
I agree.
So I actually am going to send that Eagle Scout to you.
Great,
to
that'd be
talk
good.
about that. So again, I fully support this. I just would like to talk with some of the other towns to see if there are any other issues. And my personal thing is, I'd like the people of the town to vote on it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think it may be a very good idea, but I think we need to look very carefully at it. I know about 10 or 12 years ago, there were communities that signed maintenance contracts to have their streetlights maintained with a electric light company somewhere north of Boston. And it turned out that I believe the gentleman that was offering the deal was getting a commission, and he ended up getting himself in a lot of trouble, and the maintenance contracts were canceled. What I fear is if we don't cross our T's and dot our I's, we could end up assuming responsibility for maintenance, which means buying a truck, having an electrician. So I want to I think this $2,000 a year is an extraordinarily low price. I also question why the Department of Public Utilities is not requiring a separate rate for LED lights that would have a lower rate, reflecting lower, if in fact, the lower maintenance cost and lower energy consumption.
Yeah.
Are the utilities trying to dump this on the cities and towns as a way of getting out from under? And once you make that decision, you're not going to be able to reverse it. You're going to be stuck maintaining the lights. And if the cost of the maintenance falls on the town, it could be substantial. Andrew and I spoke with town council this morning. I guess Franklin bought their lights 10 years ago. They hired a lawyer, and I understand Westwood did the same thing. They hired a lawyer who specializes in utility to negotiate contracts with them. Westwood, for example, I believe bought their poles. Now they have lighting in subdivision where they have the poles are actually not part of the regular above-ground lighting electricity system. They have separate concrete pole standards in the subdivisions, and they actually negotiated to buy those. I think it's something we need. It probably is a good thing. It may be a good thing. But if you fall into a trap and you get stuck with the maintenance down the road, it could be very
That's
costly.
why I wanted to talk to some of these other towns and see. You saying Franklin has had this for 10 years?
Franklin's had it for 10 years. They have a lot more street lights. They have, they're
Spread out town.
as town council said to me, they're lit up like a Christmas tree. When sometimes when you go out there, they light their subdivisions are all lit, which we don't do here. And I'm sure they're, the higher the budget, the less the maintenance is as a percentage of the budget cost. So
As Franklin, because when they switched 10 years ago, they didn't put in LEDs. They weren't around then.
no, they didn't. No.
So have they switched over to LEDs now?
I don't know.
I'm not sure of that.
That's what we're trying to find out. As I said, I think it could be a very good thing. It is $42,000 is a relatively small expenditure on the scale of the $60 million the town spends. But I don't want to have us. There are certain things the town is good at doing. People are always saying we should privatize. Well, here's a case where we have privatized. Now we're talking about having the public take it over. I want to make sure it's the right thing to do because it may be irreversible if you do it. And I don't want to get stuck with the maintenance down the road where we end up having to pay, $60,000 or $70,000 for a truck, and then have to hire electricians and pay prevailing wage rates to have them go out and maintain the lights. What happens when a car hits a pole and the light is damaged? What's the response time for the town to coordinate with the crews and to get a light fixture up? What happens when you have a blizzard or you get a hurricane and you get a lot of tree damage and you get lighting fixtures that might have been damaged with a transformer blowing? I just don't know. I think we have to move with deliberate speed on this.
Yeah.
So I think that what I heard Andrew saying was that there are at least 4 companies that provide the maintenance, one of which is Seaman's, which is that the German Siemens?
Yeah.
I mean, so that's a substantial company that's not going to disappear on us. It sounds like you need to satisfy yourself, Mike, since you're the guy that runs the town, on this, and satisfy yourself that the maintenance is going to work out, and get answers to your questions as to what happens when the car hits the pole, when the storm comes and a couple fixtures come down, and whether or not that's included in the maintenance contracts, and what have been people's experience with that. But it just sounds like you need to get yourself comfortable with it. I mean, the savings makes absolute sense to me, and I like the fact that we get a better light out of it.
I
That's
like it,
safer.
but I also wonder, why are the utilities providing a different rate? Now, I know they probably like this because the power that they're using at night is off-peak power.
Yeah.
It's very inexpensive power. It's power that would be thrown away because you don't need as much light, but you can't shut down a power plant
Yeah.
from 12 midnight to 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
You have to keep that running 24 hours a day. So what they're selling is very cheap power. If they can keep the rate at the mercury vapor rate instead of having a separate LED rate, you know, they're making, preserving a lot of their money. Because if they don't need the electricity for LED lights, there should be a lower rate for those lights, and that should be reflected in what we're billed. Why isn't the DPU or whoever regulates these
But
things,
since-
why aren't they doing that in behalf of the
Good
public?
question. We should have raised it with our state reps.
Yeah.
They are moving towards, I mean, there's been a lot of push in order to get an LED rate. I think there's one utility in Mass has an LED rate for streetlights. And the other one, National Grid and Eversource, they're eventually gonna have to get on board because there's a lot of support for that.
But their lobbying and their power is tremendous. I mean, look at the double pole thing, where by law, they have to remove those double poles within 90 days. They don't because there's no fee attached.
Right.
And every year, that gets defeated. So their lobbying efforts is incredibly strong.
And I just don't want to get caught in a trap where they want to get rid of the service because it's a pain in the neck for them to run. If they can dump it on the cities and towns, are we going to get stuck with the maintenance cost? And are they 5 years down the road when the contract expires? These companies are saying, hey, it's not worth it, $2,000 or $3,000 a year. It's costing us more than that paperwork to just keep track of these systems to go out. So we're going to jack up the price and
But even if they doubled
We're
it,
stuck with
Mike,
it.
you know, if we're saving 31,000 a year, then we're saving 28,000 a year instead. We're still way ahead.
what if they decide not to offer the service?
Well, there's certainly a market there for the service, and so that I'm assuming
Yeah, I
somebody's
mean-
gonna.
Market at the right price.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many communities have these lights and are owning these lights, and that's the trend, and they maintain it. So I think there's enough to support companies doing this.
And part of the argument, you remember when we put the LED bulbs in the traffic signals, was that it was very expensive for the town to change the bulbs in the traffic signals when they went out, because we needed to send somebody out with a bucket truck and a bulb to
Police
screw in.
detail,
And,
yeah.
and the LED lights just apparently last a long time.
Yeah.
And so that there's much less need for maintenance, and that was one of the big arguments with the traffic signals, that we were gonna save a lot of money by by putting in the LED traffic signal lights, so that we wouldn't have the maintenance, we wouldn't have to fix them when the bulbs went out.
And we've saved about somewhere around $2,000 to $3,000 a year just from doing that LED conversion on the traffic signals.
That's worked out very well.
Pretty good.
Yeah. I
So-
just am a little leery of jumping
So,
in too quickly.
since you're the one that seems to have the most issues with it, Mike, can you satisfy yourself in sort of maybe in the next month or so that we can get going on this, if it makes sense?
I can try.
And I'll do my best to talk to different towns, get an idea as to what they think, get recommendations about maintenance companies. Included with the contract usually is, for a maintenance contract, is a surety bond. So if they they fail on their obligation, we pull the bond, and so we're kind of covered in that respect.
Yep.
So that's another thing.
Yep.
But I'll work with Mike to to alleviate some of these issues and listen to any more concerns you gentlemen have about this.
Yeah, I think the long-term thing is a big deal, you know what I mean? Even though I know Franklin, did it before there were LEDs, it would be great, I think, to get some good feedback from them, or any other town that you could check.
Absolutely.
That's bought them quite a while ago, so you obviously have the experience of what can go wrong
Mhm.
over a longer period of time.
Right.
Because I don't think, we're not gonna really get much useful feedback, I wouldn't think, either from Medway or Westwood, because it's recent, right?
It is fairly
It's
recent.
Yeah, so they haven't had a chance for things to go wrong that they didn't
Mhm.
plan for, or you couldn't predict, I guess.
Right.
So,
But when did the conversion with the LED really begin with communities? How many years ago?
It was,
I'm not sure exactly, but it seemed like
it was fairly recent.
3 to
It's
4
like-
years
Yeah, I
ago
would say 3 to 4 years.
seemed to be when the majority of them were really starting to
It was
hit-
probably
hit
3
this.
years ago, Andrew, that I heard that fellow George Woodbury speaking at the MMA meeting, and he was sort of the guy that I guess got the legislation through the state that allowed the towns to buy and he's carved out a niche in terms of helping towns, advising towns on how to buy their streetlights. but it's been fairly recent.
So it doesn't sound like there's gonna be a long track record of any community with the LEDs.
Not with the LEDs, no.
But,
I think just-
but the Franklin and others that own it, their own,
Just
what the
maintenance
maintenance
things,
issue
what,
are.
what things popped up, you know, because I'd
Sure.
love to hear about that, you know.
I know, I
Worst
used,
case
yes.
scenarios, I mean,
Yeah.
we really need to
Yeah.
understand that.
Sure.
Yeah, it is very recent, 'cause I used to ask Fred Davis all the time about LED streetlights, and he'd say they're not there yet.
Not quite
Yeah.
there, I remember that.
And all of a
Yeah, I
sudden,
can remember the
he
first
said that
time
they
we
were.
talked to Fred about LEDs at the Energy Committee, it was basically, at that time, it was just for the exit lights inside buildings. They weren't good for anything else. But
Right,
now,
yeah.
I mean, you know, you buy the light bulbs, you buy the street lights, and Fred, by the way, is worked on this presentation, I think,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot.
full disclosure on that, you know, because Fred is in town and he's on the Energy Committee.
Yep.
Town council has said that he will not be able to bid on this contract because of the conflict of interest. So he would be excluded from any procurement.
Well, as I said, it looks like this is something we should do, but Mike raises a lot of good points, because
Absolutely.
the town doesn't want to be able to get locked into something and then a couple years down the road find that there's all these additional costs and we
Mhm.
can't get out of that, and why didn't we research this a little better?
Sure.
And again, my sticking point, I still would like to see this be a stand-on vote that the people of the town meeting voted on, rather than the selectmen tacking it onto the budget.
So,
Okay.
and I think that's a good idea, too. And if we are gonna go that way, can I maybe make the request that, Mike, if you can satisfy yourself in a timely enough manner that we can actually then open up the annual town meeting warrant for this year to insert this measure, so that we can get it done this town meeting?
Well, and so if what you're looking for at town meeting is just to get a vote from the community about doing the lights, I mean,
Yeah.
you could at least do that. There's nothing binding on that. We're not buying the lights yet. We could at least we could at least get them to say, yes, we are in support of this measure, and let's move forward with this. So, you know.
I mean, the light's gonna look different, and so that
Well,
might bother some people.
I want to make sure we ask the question the right way.
Yeah.
You know, it's like on these hospital surveys, I saw everybody says, what would you like to see at the hospital? And they all said, oh, I'd like to see a farm, I'd like to see a museum, I'd like to see us playgrounds. They should ask the question,
What's the cost?
how much are you willing to raise your taxes in order to provide these things? That's the way you need to
This
ask
one's
the
good,
question.
because this one's gonna save you $31,000 a year, so.
Well,
Well,
that's what I want to make sure, yeah.
yeah, that's, you know.
So you're saying that, Mr. Peterson, you want to get something in before town meeting. What is it exactly you want
Well,
to get?
and the issue there is that we've already closed the annual town meeting warrant.
Right.
The selectmen in the past have opened up the annual town meeting warrant at the beginning of a meeting and closed it at the end of the meeting to accommodate things. And I guess I would just suggest that we try to do that, because this is gonna save us money every year.
Well,
and
it
so that I
looks
just-
like it does initially,
Yeah.
yes.
And so that, what I would suggest, or what I would ask is that Mike, who is raising the question, satisfy himself in the next week or two, so that we can then still have it on a course
Well,
to get taken up at town meeting. And Mark, if you've got questions too, you know,
Yeah.
let's make a point of looking at it in the next week or two.
As
And
soon as I figure out how to cut $1 million out of the budget.
Are you-
31,000 here.
Are you looking for then a price tag on that as well, of the version?
Well, I
option
didn't
1,
quite
2, or 3
understand
here?
the three options on how you pay for it, so I would leave that up to
88,000.
Andrew and Mike to figure out as to, because it sounds like you can either put in the budget the 104,000,
Well, 88,000 actually.
88
Yeah.
after the
incentives.
incentives.
The
Or
only
you
thing-
had some other ways here of doing it, bonding or borrowing.
And there's also some low-interest bonds from the state. I can't remember exactly what they're called, but they're qualified energy bonds or something like that. Basically, they're bonds you can borrow on a short term in order to finance
Pay for
projects,
those,
solar
yeah.
arrays, that sort of thing. I can't remember exactly again what they are, but that is another option.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, even if you borrow, I mean, because if your payback period's 2.5 years, you're gonna certainly save the money to pay whatever the borrowing costs are pretty quickly.
Sure.
So are you looking then for an $88,000, would be a warrant article that would deal with going to this program and appropriating the money to do, I think you're saying option 3?
I would leave that up to Andrew and to Mike to figure out as to which way that they think is the most appropriate way for the town to do it.
Well, all right.
Well, you could word it in the way where, you say they want to vote that a sum of money be raised, or, however warrant articles have been written in the past, saying we want to, look at, look at financing this somehow, I'm not sure.
Well, then we're kind of circumventing the town meeting process that Richard had spoke to about having the town making an informed decision. If we put in a warrant article without all the facts, the town, of course, is gonna say, sure, we'll be glad, we'll vote anything to save money or to buy the lights without all the facts. And then then we're kind of back to the selectmen making a decision again. I don't know, it's February 23rd, it's 2 months to town meeting. It seems like we're looking to slam this thing through.
I would agree with that. I think there is there's still some issues and questions that need to be satisfied, and trying to, it would be a tight timeline. It would be.
And you've got to get the warrant committee to feel comfortable with that too, and they might, it might be just too quick for them too.
I agree. They got enough on their
Just-
plate.
Any
So.
suggestion, maybe we look at it and then come back to the following town meeting?
Well, I think that's what I was talking about, because if we're gonna look at the town meeting as the function, to make a decision on this, it's pretty quick, We've asked everyone else pretty much that have had warrant articles that we had a cutoff date, to get things done, to kind of keep things under control. And I think the warrant committee kind of has been has been slapping everyone's hands the last couple of years with them getting changes at the last minute, and them having to rush and make financial decisions or recommendations, with no time to get ready. They've been, I think, trying to remind us that we should stick to these cutoffs for warrant articles. So, I think it's just too much quick this year, whatever, that's my opinion.
I can see that. It would be. I think it would be tight to try and gather all this information in the time frame and get it in a timely manner to the warrant committee. So,
That's
but
my
at the very least, we're talking about it,
Which is
and that's it's something we can start thinking about, maybe at least for the next year.
Yeah.
Get some more research, maybe get some bids in hand, and say, hey, we have some hard numbers now.
And so on, yeah.
But it sounds like you all are in support of moving forward with, there's nothing wrong with
No,
getting
certainly
information.
not. No,
So,
certainly not, because we got to really,
Yeah.
want to really understand the numbers.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with Mark in the sense, because I think the whole issue with the assisted living was that people didn't have the proper information to vote in town meeting. And can we gather all this information? Again, I would like to hear from some of these other towns of what their experience has been. It's definitely, I think, to the town's advantage to take this route, but Mike has raised another issue, a number of issues on the maintenance, and again, I think it's something that the townspeople should be able to vote on, not just the Board of Selectmen, and I think you're right, I think we're kind of rushed to get that in by next month.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can get your work done, get all the facts in, then you go before the warrant committee, and then it's, as you said, it's, no-brainer. You're saving all kinds of money, and that's what we have to do in Medfield, again, because we have such little industrial base, everything comes off the taxpayers. And again, I commend you to try to find little ways along the way that we can save the taxpayers' money, and this clearly is one, as is the green community. So, I again, fully support it, but I agree with Mark in the sense that we don't have a lot of time. There are some issues and questions out there that I think are gonna be asked, that I'm not sure if we'd have the time to do that.
I agree.
And I think the people at town meeting should make that decision.
Yeah, and that's my job, is to present you guys with
Good.
these
No, I like
different options, and I'll see what I can do to alleviate those questions.
That sounds good.
While Andrew's here, maybe he could give you guys an update on the solar photovoltaic.
Yes,
Yeah.
sure. So the project is almost done.
Good.
We're just making the final electrical connection. Everything's been run. The panels are up, wires are run into the building. We're just making that final connection
Okay.
into the breaker panel
Yeah.
in the plant. They were working on it today. And I'm going out there tomorrow morning to see what the progress is. Hopefully, once they make that connection, it comes online.
Yeah.
They start doing the checks to make sure that everything was installed correctly. Our consulting comes out, has the punch list, make sure, that the contractor fulfilled their requirements. And once that happens, then we take ownership of the array.
We're gonna have a little ceremony. Do you think about having a little ceremony?
I certainly hope so, yeah. I mean, I'm right now, I mean, what is it, the 23rd? I mean, we're probably looking at March,
Yeah,
mid-March or something
yeah,
like
that'd
that.
be nice to do. I think it'd be important, it'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
Invite people out, you know what I mean? And as
Yep.
many people can come, I think it'll be, you probably already thought about that.
No, we haven't. Mike has been asking about that too. But actually, DOER needs to come out to verify that we actually built an array, so we can get the remainder of the $90,000 in grant money. So she's actually coming out in the 17th, 16th. So maybe that might be a date in mid-March that we can that we'll look at. But that's the project is there, and we're moving forward.
Yeah, we need to have a little ground, a little ceremony. So this is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
It's a
Yeah.
nice project. It really
So
is.
since it's an electrical installation, Andrew, instead of a ribbon cutting, are you going to have a wire cutting?
Wire.
A live wire, right?
Wire.
Oops!
No, then
Well, there-
you won't get electricity into the plant if you go the wire.
Shut everything. Actually, there's a breaker switch on the outside. You just say, "Oh, on,"
Oh, there you go.
something like that. We'll work out those details. But yeah, so that's the status of that.
We
project.
can line the selectmen up holding hands, and we'll form the connection for you.
For a guest, I don't know whether this is for a solar panels we're putting at the wastewater treatment plant, and it's supposed to generate about 30, I think on average 37% of the electricity for the plant. So should save us about $40,000+ a year on electric costs. So
Good thing.
And is the plant the biggest electrical user in the town?
No, the high school is.
The high
actually.
school is.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, the high school about 1.3 million kilowatt hours. The plant is 800,000,
Really?
and the third is actually well 6.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big
Wow.
hog. And then Blake Middle School.
High school.
The yeah,
How
huge.
they doing over there? I don't know. Huh? That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It takes a lot.
Yeah, it's a big building.
So that's the heating, ventilating, and the lights.
Well, it's that's just for electricity.
Yeah.
The heat, again, they're also the biggest user of all the gas. So, but yeah, there's a lot going on.
And they're looking, I know you met with a number of students up there, looking at ways to try to put some solar up there to reduce the overhead on that.
Yes.
Start taking light bulbs out of the classrooms.
And the Prop 2.5 thing, like we did with the
That's
street lights, right? Yeah.
I
No,
think
they've done a lot of LED conversions over
Yeah.
there as well, and this Mass Save provides $1 per bulb LEDs or even free bulbs, and Mr. Peterson over at the schools has been taking advantage of that. So we're starting to see some savings there.
And they also put in so that if the light is on and there's no motion after all the
Yeah.
lights go up.
Yep.
I mean, they have taken another step.
There's many different options to do, and they've been doing a good job over there.
And maybe just to follow that real quick, if you could, where are we going after we're looking at, on the new public safety building?
Yes, we are.
Solar And down the road on the DPW garage?
Correct. So here's the thing, though, is that the Solar Renewable Energy Credit Program, SREC, that has now hit its cap. And that hit its cap in early February. So any new projects now will have to be on a waiting list unless the legislature passes
And
and
it's still out
increases
right now
that
between the
cap.
House and the Senate, correct?
Yeah, it's in committee right now. I think as soon as it gets it out of committee, then it should be okay. But apparently, there's obviously some opposition to that, but there's a tremendous amount of support as well.
Yeah.
And I spoke to our reps when Lieutenant Governor Polito was out here, and they all supported it and are tracking it. And
Yeah.
so hopefully that will go through. And I think that if the SRECs do not go through, I would not, I'd have to do the numbers, but it really doesn't I don't think it would work out for us.
It just doesn't get numbers.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And that's where we might want to go more of the power purchase agreement route,
Yeah.
where someone else builds it and
Yeah.
captures the 30% tax credit
Yeah.
that they can have. And so for the DPW, I think that might be more of an option
Yeah.
in that case, because we can build a big enough array where a power purchase agreement would be beneficial enough for another developer.
For someone to bid, yeah, get a good
Absolutely.
price on it. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, and public safety building, they were looking at doing a change order for that. I think they talked to you a little while ago about that. But they agreed because of the uncertainty with SREC, so we're gonna kind of hold off a little bit. And it's probably gonna be cheaper anyway if we wait until we take ownership of the building
Okay.
and then go out to bid with it.
Okay.
Because we're getting some, again, the costs keep on coming down and there's
Yep,
no
yep.
markup with, the GC, so.
That's right, yeah.
so
Andrew
we'll-
did get them to put conduits, agree to put conduit. They did a change order, put the conduits in, so that
Okay.
when they go to do it, everything will be in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that conduit was designed specifically enough for the diameter of wires that need to go through for the solar panels.
That's true, when they built the DPW garage. too.
No, there's no there's no conduit there.
I thought that one of the things the DPW was gonna be.
The roof is ready for that. It isn't as complicated, the DPW, because you just got the garage space, so, and it's not like having to knock walls down to put the conduits up. You've got the block walls in the garage, and you can just run it up and penetrate the
Yeah.
roof, so. But the roof is
Rated for that.
rated
Right.
to handle that.
That's right,
so.
yeah.
And I thought they put a lot of penetrations in, but these panels, they actually weigh them down.
Yeah, they're ballasted now,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
makes it so
Yeah,
easy.
so you're not penetrating, you have one of those fabric roofs,
Yeah.
so you're not putting a lot of holes in them to get the panels, you're weighing them down,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, Andrew, thanks so
All right,
much.
thank you.
That's great, thank you.
All we need now is sunshine.
Yeah.
We have to review the warrant articles. Mike, I know you've been spending a lot of time,
Yeah,
Trying to pull rabbits out of the
two
hat.
packages here, and I don't know, I think there may be a couple of extra if you guys want to grab one over there to take a look at it. But this one right here is probably the best one to start with. Joy sent this up this afternoon. All the budgets are in now. Some of them are gonna need to be reviewed. But it will give you an idea. If you go to the second page, you can see the total budgets right now are up 4.36%, which means they've got to come down. That's part of the $1 million I've got to figure out where to
Yep.
save.
Oh, I see.
Overall, the,
I'm sorry, Mike, the 4.36%, what is that total in dollars and cents? That we have to bring that down?
2.5 million.
Thanks, guys, for coming.
yeah, thank you, yeah. The total budgets are up just under $2.5 million, $2,473,000.
That we're over?
We're over.
No, that's the increase from last year.
But what's the amount, in order to have a balanced budget, we'd have to reduce this budget by?
Well, we'll get to that, but if you go to this page here, it's about the third or fourth page.
Yep.
And if you go down the bottom, you'll see deficit finance and free cash,
Yep.
$2,081,000.
Yep.
Now, we've already taken 500,000, we normally take every year, so that brings it down to $1.5 million.
Yeah, I see what you mean, yep.
If we want to only use 500,000 in free cash to reduce the tax rate, you'd have to reduce that by $1,581,000.
Yep. Yep.
So, now, these figures do include money for the field, the multi-purpose field
Oh, okay.
renovation, although it is not a lot, because the way you borrow the money, the full impact of the field renovation wouldn't be felt until fiscal 18.
Mm-hmm.
So you're only gonna have about 25,000 on the budget
Oh,
for
okay.
next year, so.
Too bad.
But the following year, you have about 127,000, I believe, on the budget. And actually, that gets reduced because the schools are gonna contribute $25,000 a year out of one of their revolving accounts, I
Okay,
believe. So
so
that'll
it's-
reduce it to about 100,000 a year for 10 years. But, so in order to get down to the 500,000 use of free cash,
Yeah.
right now, we'd have to cut $1.5 million, $1.5 million, yeah. $1 million, almost $6 million, $581.
Yeah.
Now, some of these figures, when you look through the budgets, there is obvious room. I know the schools right now are up 5.46%, I believe, if you look at the second page.
Mike, can I, and I apologize, but I'm on a train of thought here. What's the normal, is there, from the warrant committee's point of view, what that free cash level should be at?
They'd like to start building it up. The recommended, the bonding agencies recommend that you have between 5 and 10% of your operating budget in either stabilization or free cash.
Okay.
So our budgets are around 60 million, so you would be between $3 and $5 million. Right now, because of the school building assistance money, which I think is about 8 or 9 million left in that account,
Yeah.
that we're using over the life of the bonds to pay it off, we easily meet those amounts.
Fine.
But that money is disappearing over time. When the bonds are paid off, that will be gone. So what they would like to do is start building
Yep.
the free cash and/or stabilization up, so that by the time that happens, they can still meet the 5 to 10%
Yep.
target range.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Good. Okay. Okay, for example, if you look at the school budget, they're up, there's a 5.42%.
Mm-hmm.
They are hoping to get that down to 4%.
Okay.
Now, if you look at this page here, it's the next to the last page in this package.
Okay.
I've come up with just suggestions, and don't get alarmed when you see some of these. It's,
Is this the cuts?
yeah, if they were able to cut it back to 4% from 5.4%,
Okay. Yep.
that would cut 431,000 out of the budget, out of that deficit. So that would bring it down to about $1,000,001, $1,000,002. Similarly, the town budgets are, what are they up? They're up about 5%. 5.6.
So we've got
If you cut that back to 4%, that would save you another $366,000.
Yep.
So that brings you down. And if you look at some of these other cuts, that would bring us down to 865,000 if you made all these cuts,
Yep.
minus the 500,000 that we normally use for free cash. That gives you 365,000 more to cut to get down to the 500.
Yep.
Mike, why do you put 0 on cut hospital maintenance?
Because originally Chris thought we could cut money out of that when she was going through the bills that they've expended already this year. She doesn't think that they're going to be able to squeeze anything out of that. There's 150,000 there for maintenance. I believe she thought they've already spent 175,000 this year already
Yep.
on maintenance up there. Now, that may be a little bit accelerated because a lot of it was boarding up the buildings.
Yep.
So she's trying to figure out whether they can squeeze 25 or 50,000 out of that and reduce it. But for right now, we should hold on that. The downtown improvement projects, I put that in, I minus the 5,500 that you had for the pocket park maintenance.
Yep.
And I just threw that in because we don't have any suggested projects right now for.
Well, we do, we're just waiting to get the results from the summit in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that can always be added back, but I'm just
Right.
scraping wherever I can to get.
Yeah.
And there are other cuts. For example, Andrew had budgeted 88,000 for the street lighting budget.
Yep.
If we decide to wait a year on that,
Yep.
that cuts that down by about 40,000.
Yep.
So what you got to do is go through all of these things. Surprisingly, when we take a look at the warrant articles, there's not a lot of tax levy money in the warrant articles.
Okay.
A lot of it is from other sources. It's from the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. It's from the early payment of sewer betterments. It's from the stabilization fund, those sort of things. So there isn't as much in the budget articles to cut as you might think, which means a lot of these cuts, if you're going to make them, have to come out of the budgets.
Yeah, come out of the operating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a new ambulance in there? Is there,
Yep, the new ambulance is in there, and the chief gave me a figure of 285,000 for the new ambulance.
over and above the revolving fund monies that's
No,
available?
No, he has about 200,000
In the revolving
in,
account.
in the revolving account. What I suggested for that is, we've done this in the past, take the remaining 85,000 out of the stabilization fund, and over the next few years, as you replenish the mileage ambulance revolving fund, you pay back the stabilization fund. So in effect, you're doing a temporary loan from stabilization.
You did that the last time, you've done that.
Yeah, I think I was with a fire truck or something, we did it, yeah. That's what they were hoping to do with the field thing, instead of borrowing the $1 million, but there ain't that much money in the stabilization fund. There's about 800,000 right now in the stabilization fund. We are, in these budgets, we've included 200,000 adding to that. However, we've also, in these budgets, taking 200,000 out to fund the OPEB liability.
Yep.
400,000 OPEB liability. So, in effect, you're not increasing the stabilization fund this year. In fact, if you take the 85,000, you're decreasing it somewhat, although that's only temporary.
Temporary. and then
What,
you-
I didn't quite follow what you did with OPEB. We were going to put 400,000 towards OPEB, and we're not putting 400,000?
We are, but 200,000 of it would come out of the stabilization fund.
Oh,
About 38,000 would come out of the, paying the early payment on the county retirement,
Yep.
and the remainder would come out of the tax levy.
yeah.
So you're still putting the 400,000 in. And right now, we have about $1.5 million in that fund. Our liability should go down once now that we've set up a trust, because we'll have some income from that trust money that will add to the fund, and that'll be recognized and should lower our liability a bit. But when your liability is $47 million, $1.5 million doesn't seem to do too much towards it.
Mike, are you figuring on all the individual department, their requests? Is that?
This is what this is at this point. This is what they've
Not
requested.
what the warrant committee, but it's their request, what they came in.
Right. This is what they submitted to Joy, and she's
Just
put
put
this
it in.
together. Now, in the tax rate estimate, I've added amount of money to cover collective bargaining agreements and any general salary increases that are recommended. So there is a big
Police and fire?
police and fire, but the fire contract, if they settle, it goes back 4 years.
Retroactive to?
Yeah, so you have to fund it retroactively for 4 years. Now,
And there was no money in those previous years set aside?
no.
That was carried over anyway?
You can't carry it over, right? You have to-
Yeah, you can't carry it over, and it would tip them off if you carry, they'd say, well, you carry that much money, then we could get this, so you don't want to do it for, it's a
So in fact,
negotiating
it would be a
strategy.
4 or 5 year settlement all at once?
Yeah, I think 4 years, 3 years back, and then the
3 years
next year or
back,
so,
right.
yeah. Other with the police, it's only going forward, their contract expired, so that's, on the other hand, there's 20 policemen, there's only 8 firefighters, so it's 6 of one, half dozen of another.
So no matter how it comes out on your possible cuts there, but if
Yeah.
you made roughly $865,000 of cuts, you're still looking at, you're saying about $365,000 that would have to come out of the individual department budgets?
Right, or somewhere, yeah.
Somewhere.
Or, well, the other thing too is, for example, sometimes, like in going over this, I talked to Vaughn in the assessor's office. We just, as you probably all know, the excise bills went out this week, and that was up between $100,000 and $200,000. So I talked to her and said, would it be possible to raise the estimate for local receipts for excise tax? And she said, yeah, probably if you raised it somewhere between 50 and 100,000, you'd be okay. So I raised it 80,000,
That's already factored in?
already factored in, yeah. On the other hand, sewer betterment assessment revenue, that goes down as people pay off their sewer betterments. We lose the annual revenue coming in, so I've had to lower that. And you go through that with all these things. When we started out, we raised the meals tax revenue because we found out it was coming in at about $10,000 a month. So we've got 115,000. I think in the summer it slacks off a little, so we didn't. But those are the kind of things that are changing all the time. And unfortunately, some of the things we won't know until the fall. We don't know what new growth is until probably October or November, when the assessors have put all their information together, had it reviewed and approved by the state to tell you how much. Now, I've estimated, I think, 350,000 for new growth. Whether it comes in, I try to estimate conservatively, so hopefully it should come in at least that amount.
You get the information from John Knapp about the number of building permits that he's issued to factor in?
Yes, yeah, we got that. I got that from Joy. They posted it up through June. I've had to lower that because last year we had the park, all the revenue from the park, which brought, I don't know, almost a couple $100,000 in building permit fees.
Oh, the fees. I'm not thinking of the fees. I'm thinking of when people pull building permits, you can sort of forecast that you're going to have new growth.
And the assessors have a pretty good record of, over the last few years, what's been added. You know, there's not a lot of new construction going on.
But it seems like
It's mostly
there's,
renovations or tear downs and rebuilds.
yeah, I mean, it seems like between Old Village Square and what the Larkins are doing, it seems like there's,
Larkins
Things getting-
is pretty well in this current year already. The park is already in this current year. You might
Yeah.
pick up a little for what was done after June 30th, but, so a lot of that, that's why you kind of, and you know, it's been running somewhere between 300 and 400,000 new growth. It's pretty consistent over the years. Interest earnings is another thing, you know. The Federal Reserve was gonna raise interest rates 4 times this year. Now they're backing down on it, so, you know, I'm using 40,000 for interest earnings. Who knows, you know, whether that's enough or not. It used to be, one time, we had $800,000 a year in interest earnings when the rates were, you know, skyrocketing. But that's shriveled down to, I think last year we had 25,000. That's how dramatically these things can change. So, as I said, don't panic. There's a couple of options. One is you can take a little more free cash, which is what we did last year. I think we used another 128,000 in free cash. As they review these budgets, there'll be changes here where you can cut it down. We may, you know, the legislature may decide to up the state aid a little bit more. You know, all those things come into play, and some you know by town meeting, some you're just guessing at, and you try to guess conservatively. So.
But can I just, back to my question, you have 366,000 cut town budget increase to 4%. That's cutting into the existing budgets that have been submitted, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's.
So
take
this
this figure, yeah.
365 would then, if you went back to the budget, they would have to have an additional cut, right? Because some of them, I've taken, some over 4%.
Yeah. There's one, for example, there's a couple of them. Actually, generally, they're pretty good shape. But there's a couple, for example, the public safety building is up. And actually, you have to take that into account. The chief in his police budget is combining several of the smaller budgets.
Right,
So
so they wipe out.
he's taking the
School traffic.
school traffic,
Yeah, I see
and,
that.
and there's one other he's putting in there.
Okay.
Of course, school traffic, I forget what the other one was. But so all these things come into play, and as I said, on the revenue side, there may be some pleasant surprises on the revenue side. You know, I can't think of a lot right now.
This is the first pass, you got a
Yeah.
chance to tweak things a bit and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
I always say that they're alarming, but don't panic yet. So,
so, Mike, did we have some bad experience with workers' comp? Because that's up 20,
yes.
4%,
yes,
so-
we've had 2 long-term claims. One has been out for, I think, a year and a half. I think he was finally shut off, and the other one is still out and has filed for disability retirement. Once he goes out on disability retirement,
okay.
that's approved, that will come off. But that bad experience lasts with you for 3 years. In your experience modification factor, they call it.
Yep.
So you're stuck with it for 3 years. On the other hand, our liability experience and our health insurance claims have been very good.
Yep.
That's why we only had a 5.5% rate increase on our health insurance, which sounds like only 5.5%, but compared to what a lot of the communities, some of them are getting hit with 10, 11, 12%. So
Okay.
you can go up or down depending on your experience.
You did include the purchase of the streetlights here, I see, in this number.
That's
So-
right. So that, yeah, that's a potential,
So if we're not
for
gonna
some
do that
savings
this
there.
year, then that's 88,000.
Yeah. The multi-purpose field,
Yeah.
I was asked to come up with a way to fund that,
Yep.
and I've put together a sheet here that you have in your package.
You get really creative, did you?
Well, yeah, I've asked them to cut the cost by 200,000. I don't know how they're gonna do that. Maybe shorten up the field, have a 90-yard field or something.
Maybe a better chance of
Don't,
winning.
don't paint it or something, yeah, no
Yeah,
lines,
yeah,
no,
no
no
lines.
yard markers, yeah.
90 yards, is that
Or have the kids in detention dig up the old drainage.
That's what you do, yeah, that's what you do.
Whatever works. And actually, the way it works out, most of the cost doesn't come on fiscal 17,
Yep,
so
yep. Oh, I see.
you're gonna get whacked in fiscal 18. In a fiscal 18, it's about $100,000, because the schools somehow are gonna pick up 25,000
Yep,
on some
yep.
revolving fund they have,
Yep.
or rental account or something. So, but for next year, you're only talking about $50,000, and they're gonna pick up 25,000, so you're only talking about 25,000 next year coming out of that. I'm assuming a 3% interest rate on a 10-year bond issue, so that's what that's based on. And the bonding cost seems high, and that's why we don't like to borrow small
Yeah.
amounts, like $1 million.
No, because this costs a lot.
Because, yeah, the bonding cost, 3.5% a year project costs, 35,000. For example, on the 18 million we borrowed for the public safety building and the solar photovoltaic, I guess it was about 17 million. I think our costs were less than 100,000.
Yep.
So as a percentage of that, it's very small.
Right.
Whereas when you borrow $1 million, it's a big percentage.
A lot of things are fixed costs, you get the fee and the labor costs and
Yeah,
everything else.
yeah, you got the legal fees, the
Yeah.
bonding,
Doesn't matter what you
Moody's
borrow.
bond review, you got the printing cost,
Yeah.
servicing cost for the debt.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. And then if you look somewhere in here, I have a list of the articles, so you can see what the amounts are at this point and what funding sources are. I hope I put it in here. Could be in no rush, I may have left that out, but. Yep, I did, I left it out. Sorry about that, but I will get that to you. We've been through a lot of the articles, I think probably, the only one, there's only a couple, I think we did have we're waiting to hear on the downtown summit results to see if we want to fund some projects for downtown improvements. I think there is 100,000 that in that 2.1 million for the Park and Rec building plans.
Yep.
So that is one potential area.
They're coming in next week, right?
They're all coming in next week. You know, this is the meeting the building committee requested
Sure, I
to
think that'd be good.
discuss all these plans.
So it's both the Council of Aging and Park and Rec, we're both looking for 100,000 for their buildings, right?
But Council on Aging has their own money.
Oh, so that's,
So
they're
that's,
funding that for the zero.
They're funding it out of their own funds, yeah. They had a bequest and they have fees from stuff they've charged, so they can come up with 100,000, whereas Park and Rec can't, so. If you'll notice in the budget too, some of the capital budget, that's the last sheet in this package. I think it was the last sheet, maybe not the last sheet.
Third
but-
sheet now.
Third sheet, okay. The Capital Budget Committee has been meeting, and they finished their work this week. I think they met Monday or Tuesday. No, Monday. It was yesterday, so it would be yesterday. And these are their recommendations for what they are recommending be funded. $399,540 to come from the tax levy and the rest from other sources. Mark is on that committee, so if you have any questions, he might be better to direct them to him.
I have one, what's a bombardier?
Well, that's the sidewalk plow.
Oh, a sidewalk plow?
Yeah.
A bombardier, huh?
Yeah,
How about the trash trailer?
yeah, for the transfer station, they need another trailer.
Oh, additional.
Oh, that's the 10-wheeler thing?
Yeah, it's not the tractor, but the trailer itself.
Yeah,
The one they replaced is, 33 years old, I think, the one they want to replace. So it's getting a little tired.
And how about the stainless steel sander for the DPW?
Yeah, this is the last one.
Is that something that fits inside a body or something, or?
Well, they've been replacing all their steel ones with stainless steel. This is the last one. This is number 5 of 5.
Okay.
So they've been on a 5-year program to replace all of their sanders with a stainless steel body, so they'll last longer.
These, I think, go on the Mack trucks.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Drop them back.
So it's the sander that fits into the dump truck?
Yeah, exactly, yeah, it's the whole,
And do we know if the steel ones are toast at this point?
oh, they are.
Yeah, okay. And how about the two, the sewer and water department vehicles, the 162,000 for those two?
It comes out of the enterprise fund.
That's enterprise fund, huh? Okay.
And Chris tells me the water and sewer board met and voted to recommend those.
What's the condition? I know they didn't recommend the 20,000 for the town hall roof replacement. What's the condition on the roof here?
It's actually not as bad as it looks, you know. First of all, it's a fake roof. You know, the original roof is still on the building upstairs under those peaks.
Is that right? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, the original roof was flat.
The other roof was flat, and that's still there. What they did is they built towers above it, so
Disney World.
it's,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
It's fun climbing up there, that's for sure.
Is it really that?
Yeah. You know, I think Andrew was gonna have somebody, try to get somebody up to take a look at it and see if they could do some temporary repairs. We had appropriated 20,000,
Yeah.
started appropriating 20,000, assuming the cost to be somewhere around 100,000 to replace that one is done, because you're gonna have to set up staging and everything else. But then last year we stopped, we switched that 20,000 to fund the HVAC process controls. So, and then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but I believe Chris told me they decided not to fund any building projects
Yes.
pending this meeting next week with,
Right.
because the
Well,
capital plan is to do,
well, we're gonna do a master capital plan, a long-term capital plan, so they don't wanna be throwing money in case, they wanna kinda see where that all falls.
they did, as I understand it, they did recommend 2 projects because there was damage to the building if you didn't replace them. Those are over in the library.
Yeah.
Repairs to the portico at the entrance, and there's a section of the, what do they
Slate
call
roof.
it? The roof, the slate roof,
Slate roof, yeah.
where it's leaking, and they need to get that repaired because there's getting water damage inside the building, so they did.
Yeah, and this is pretty good, they've got a quote on that, so this will be going over the whole roof, fixing where it needs to be done, replacing some of the gutters and doing a lot of work, and also adding the little snow fences in more places and stuff on the slate roof to catch, it's the bars and
Yes,
stuff
yes.
going across to catch the snow, so it doesn't fall in and clean the gutters up. So, this is pretty good, and of the other, on the library, the main entrance portico, the 20 grand, actually, they've got money left over from prior projects, so we have to transfer it, and we have to do the unexpended funds and vote to move it to this new project, so really, it's just
Oh, so
41,000.
the 20,000 is actually come from existing library funds?
Exactly, leftover stuff from HVAC and lighting and stuff. like
Yeah, if you look at the second page, you'll see those projects down the bottom.
unexpended appropriation funds down the bottom, you see library.
Yeah,
Library,
yeah,
14039, HVAC. So it's really good, they're really paying attention over there. They're very good. They're really, watching the dollars and stuff, so we felt very good about it.
Good.
And then the tennis court money, money left over from the tennis courts is, in the schools, is going to be used to repair the tennis courts at Metacomet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that has to be done. Otherwise, what will happen is the tennis team they won't be able to have tennis matches there at this point. This is the last warning, I think, from the athletic, whatever it is, the MIAA or something like that. They said if you don't fix it.
Well, I'd imagine if it's
Don't
deterring
play
anyone
tennis.
using the courts could be safety issues too.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, it's a lot of work, Mike, you're doing.
That's an interesting thing on those tennis courts at Metacomet. I noticed they're running all the time, whether it's raining or nobody's playing tennis. Is there any way that some control could be put in so that it's only, even if you put gotta put some quarters in or something, charge, yeah.
I didn't realize that, when are they, well, I guess,
I think they shut off at 10 o'clock at night or something, but a lot of times if it's raining or something, there's nobody on the courts and the lights are still blazing, so.
I can talk to Kevin about that. I mean, that's Parks and Rec, is
Right.
that's
Yeah.
Metacomet, right?
Yeah.
So I can talk to him and see if he knows.
See if there's any way to cut down that, yeah.
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 I'll work with him.
Very good. Okay, so we've got our work cut out for us. Chris is meeting with the police and fire this week. Hopefully she'll have some sort of progress report for you next week on where they stand.
So, I mean, that's not reflected in your figures at all here, right?
Yes, well, it's not reflected in these budget figures. It is reflected in the tax rate estimate where I come up with the 2 million deficit, so,
It's in
Okay.
so it is covered, but, yeah. But then you'd have to allocate it to the budget.
there.
You'll notice one of the big budget increases is on the public safety because they're not sure what it's gonna cost to operate the new building. And so they wanna be on the safe side rather than run out of money halfway through the year. So that one is up substantially. I'm trying to think of what some of the other ones that went up quite a bit.
Well, that was the biggest one, 98%.
Yeah. Well, and the street lighting one was up 182, so that,
Yeah, but we've got the 80,000.
yeah.
Most of them really are,
Vet-
most of them
veterans.
aren't up hardly at all.
No, and the ones that are,
Yeah,
the veterans agent budget, if you look, that's up
Yeah.
68%.
yeah,
And that's because he's budgeted for full-time veterans agent.
yeah.
But where are we with that? Because he will be leaving and suddenly we're gonna have to look.
Yes, I
in
did,
violation of the law, to work with Millis or,
I did talk to Millis. Millis has just hired someone part-time. See, they're under 12,000, so they can do it part-time. I asked Charlie if he could have that person contact me to see if they might be interested in working here as well, so, but I haven't heard anything yet.
Okay.
what else, Mike?
I think that's it. The pension is up to 10.28%, so that's a kicker.
Doesn't it?
And
Jeez.
hopefully, as we get closer to town meetings, sometimes we get more accurate figures on the on the insurance budget, so we might be able to lower those somewhat.
But the pension, almost $200,000 increase.
Yeah, and they have told Georgia, when Georgia's our Norfolk County
Yeah.
Retirement Board representative, and they've said in order to get on a full funding schedule, it's probably gonna go up 10% a year for the next 5 years. So this is year one. So you can expect that to, and that's what makes it difficult when you live with the 2.5%, when you get a budget that's up 10%.
Right.
And this is where some of the communities are getting whacked on health insurance. We were lucky that,
Yep.
with a 5.5% increase. And actually, that budget is up less than that, and the reason it's up less than that is because a lot of the early retirees
Yeah.
who were turning 65 now have to go on a Medicare
Yeah.
plan, and that
pulling in. That's all
help save it, yeah.
Do you know, like, Tri-County, that budget's up almost 10%. Is that, do we have an increase in students, or is that just an increase overall?
I think it was, that dropped quite a bit. We were like 160,000 the year before.
Okay.
It dropped way down because our student enrollment went down.
Yeah.
Now it's going up again,
Yeah.
a little, but I don't think it's enrollment. I think that's just a budget increase. And they are having a meeting on March 1st they've invited town administrators and selectmen, if any of you want to go. It's going to be like 8:30 in the morning over at Tri-County to present information. They feel they need to do some rehab work on the building. I think it's about 40 years old, at least, that school. So they want to start doing some renovation work on it.
In the 70s.
Yeah, I think it was early 70s, because I think that was already open when I came here, so. So if any of you are interested in going, it's March 1st. It's a breakfast meeting over at
And that
Tri-County.
would be shared amongst all the towns, right?
Yeah, now, I believe the capital costs are shared under the original formula, I think. The per-student cost, the courts ruled that even though the communities had agreed on a formula for distributing the cost, the education reform funding formula superseded that, so that if you're considered a, quote, wealthy community, you pay more per student than a, quote, poor community. So we get whacked considerably more than some of the other communities because of our wealth indices, I guess you would call it. And that's just something that the courts have stuck us with, and you don't have any choice on it. So.
There were a couple things I noticed in the Globe this past week, Mike. One of them was the fact that Medfield's per household income had gone up, second only to Weston in the metro area. It had gone up like 24% to 143,000 per household. The other thing I noticed was the article about what I assumed was the stormwater regs coming out of EPA. And they were saying that it was going to be huge, huge numbers
That
for.
was, one of the Globe was on the Charles River. The one that came here was on the Ponset.
Yeah, but I think it's the same regulations.
It is.
Yeah.
But the Charles River was even more so than what
Yeah,
he was.
Oh, yeah, they were talking huge, huge numbers, but, you know,
Right.
Mike says that we're all set, that we don't have to budget
I
for it.
don't think we're all set. I think we're going to be impacted quite a bit less than a lot of other communities, because many of the things they're requiring you to do, we've been doing for 20 years.
Yeah,
Thanks to Ken and the Water and Sewer Board.
well, and there's other
And the
towns were
planning board.
budgeting like up to $1 million a year to comply, and
Yeah.
we don't have anything in our budget for it, so.
Well, it's built into the operating cost of the budget. For
Oh, it's the
example,
DPW?
we clean our catch basins every year. Some communities never clean their catch basins, so they're going to start having to clean their catch basins. Of course, when you haven't done it the first few times, it's going to be
a
tough.
little expensive.
You have to sweep your streets. We do that on a regular basis. We have a stormwater bylaw that requires that you retain, that new subdivisions and whatnot retain the water on site. Stormwater, up to a 100-year storm. We've been doing that for over 20 years, so a lot of our areas and public buildings that we've done all comply,
Already
even
comply. Yeah,
recent
good.
constructions, the public safety building, the high school projects, all of those comply, town garage. It may have some impact on some of the smaller businesses, because originally, I believe it was going to be on a new work on a site over 4 acres. Now they're talking about anything over an acre and making it retroactive, even if you weren't doing any new work on it. That's why I think there's going to be lawsuits over this. These people, in my opinion, are nuts. They just dump these regulations on you. We are putting water that is much cleaner in from our sewer treatment plant into the Charles River. We are being forced to pay to clean up the Charles River because they will not stop the non-point source pollution.
But isn't that what the stormwater regs are about? It's not the water going through our sewer treatment plant, it's the stormwater that's going around the,
It's a combination.
wastewater treatment plant.
One of the major factors is fertilizers, lawn fertilizers.
although I understood from the guys who came from the Neponset River watershed that the state had passed a ban on phosphorus or something in the fertilizer. I don't know what's in fertilizer now. Makes lawns green.
Well, I
then.
think there's still nitrogen in it, and, and we're required to get our nitrogen down to, I think, less than 1 part per billion. It used to be like 60 parts, and they keep lowering the standards, and, it's just unfair that the burden has been put on cities and towns who are in a difficult situation to pay for these things. And we get no help from the federal government in this regard. It's just mandate after mandate after mandate. And they don't care what it costs. And a lot of these organizations are getting lots of money from the federal government to turn around and impose more mandates on cities and towns. That's stormwater management. I don't think I've showed you a list. When they came out with the regulations, there were 256, not kidding, 256 conditions that you were supposed to address in your application for stormwater discharge permit. It's ridiculous. You could spend your whole time just trying to write address the conditions in the permit. It's nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. And yet, because, it's clean water, clean air, you got to do it. Everybody thinks it's wonderful. You should do it. And it's sort of like what we were talking about earlier, the questionnaires. They don't ask what it's going to cost. And they assume somehow magically it's going to be done, but it takes money. And when your taxes go up, these are part of the reasons your taxes are going up, because your water and sewer bills are going up, because you're required to do all these things that you never used to have to do.
Every once in a while, I look back at my life and how things have changed in my world during my lifetime.
Yeah.
And it is one of the things that has changed. Because I can remember the Clean Water Act was passed in the 70s. And all of a sudden, we actually have started having clean rivers. And I mean, the Boston Harbor was just it was a sewer. The Charles River, you never went near.
Yes.
And now you can swim in the Charles River, you can swim in the harbor. It's just amazing.
It's done some very good things. It's also done some very stupid bureaucratic things, in my opinion.
Well, that whole thing about changing the Charles River to make it better for alluvial fish struck me as kind of
Yes.
weird.
Yes,
But-
yeah.
Just like the, not to get too far afield, but, like the rattlesnakes, you want to bring the rattlesnakes back to the Quabbin
Yes,
reservoir.
yes. that one
Put them on an island, huh?
Yeah, but why? Just because they were there before, so I mean,
And then in
Crazy
20
stuff.
years, they'll have a rattlesnake department to eradicate the rattlesnakes.
So I
'cause
actually
they've
met
overpopulated.
that fellow whose collie was bitten by the rattlesnake out there.
yeah,
Did it?
we're
Yeah.
shooting the rattlesnakes out there.
He was gonna take me on a trip to show me the eagles out at the Quabbin.
Okay.
Well,
Anything else in the budget?
I think that's enough to dump on you for one night,
Have a
but
headache.
then,
Okay.
I think we're in good shape in terms of, I don't think you've had this information this early in past years.
Yeah.
And thanks to,
Thank you for that.
well, it's Joy and Matt and the department heads and getting their budgets in
Yeah.
early. I'd like to take credit, but all I do is throw it together from what I get from them, so.
And I think that,
Can you relay our thanks? I know
This
this
is really
extra
good.
work to them on that.
Yes.
Okay, we have 2 certificates, Mike, here, from the Mass Recycle Southeast Municipal Recycling Council. And one is for comprehensive access to household hazardous waste collection, and the other is most textile tons collected in 2014 for drop-off.
There we go.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, that's that program that schools have, and we also have bins down at the transfer station, but they've done a really great job at the schools collecting trash. Although the transfer station is the second largest. I think Dale Street is the top in terms of tonnage, and then the transfer station second.
I tried to put some clothes in that one in front of Dale Street once, and it was so full that you couldn't
Yeah.
fit anything in.
They are successful. There's the proof right there.
Yeah.
So, I hope you brought it to the transfer station
I
so
don't
we can
remember what I
catch up
did, but
with
I
it.
do remember trying to pull down the door,
handle.
and it wouldn't come down, because It was jammed.
The swap committee met this week too, and they're underway with their plans they're gonna replace the tent, highway's gonna replace it, or solid waste, Ken's gonna replace the tent for them. It blew down this winter.
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
Well, that's too bad.
And, but they've got, big plans ahead for the coming year.
They're due to open
May 3rd, I
May
believe.
3rd.
May 3rd, not
And-
April, huh? Come on.
And the other thing that is, they are looking at, I said, I've been here too long, what goes around comes around. When came here, we had garbage collection, and now we're gonna have organic food waste recycling.
Same thing.
Sounds like a fancy name
They are
for it.
going ahead with that, are they? Good.
Yeah, they're gonna try it out in
That's a good way.
the,
Test and stuff.
yeah.
But you have to bring it to the transfer station.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna try to get a grant to reduce the price of the buckets, and they have disposable bags, and they're gonna have 55-gallon drums, and they're gonna put them between the windows where you throw the trash in.
Oh, okay.
So you don't have to make another stop.
That's
They're
good.
afraid if people have too many stops, they won't bother.
That's true. Well, I like that. Good.
Speaking of the transfer station, Ken has advised us that the highway department, first of all, is finished picking up brush effective today, February 23rd. Private brush can still be taken to the transfer station, and the transfer station is going to extend their hours in the month of March. They will be open Sundays in March for their convenience, and I believe they're also are gonna be open Sundays in April.
Yeah.
So in Sundays of March and April, the transfer station will be open, and any brush that you do have can be taken down there.
And, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, it says excluding Easter.
Excluding Easter, yes. It
Easter,
will not be-
yeah.
Don't
Thank
show
you.
up on Easter Sunday.
It will not be open on Easter.
Yeah, Ken says what happens, a lot of people are calling, when's the town gonna pick up brush? He said what happens is, and they had a lot of work anyway, there were a lot of stuff down in the streets and a lot of hangers they had to get down. But he said, if word gets out that the town is gonna pick up the brush, everybody cleans out their whole yard. And I remember we had one guy up on Winter Street, it looked like Fort Ticonderoga. He must have taken 20 years of stuff and piled it up by the side of the road, so. I told Evelyn to tell him if this 70-year-old can take pick up his brush and take it to the dump, these young guys ought to be able to do it, so.
That's great having 2 months this spring, which is having March and April really is
He
nice.
will help,
Gives
yes,
people
yeah.
plenty of time to get all this, on Sundays.
Well, not only that, but that storm we had a couple of weeks ago with the heavy wet, I mean, the pine limbs came down left and right, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of, I'm sure that's gonna be very busy getting brush down there.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it's gonna be a mob scene down there. It's, if you go down, I don't know about your street, my street is just
Yeah.
a mess.
Well, Nebo always is with the trees, always comes down.
Yeah.
We have a pending to vote to sign a letter to our representative, Sean Dooley, regarding the housing court expansion that we voted back in November to support. So we need to sign that. I believe we've already voted on it.
Yep, so just sign.
So you want to sign that, and am I missing anything?
You sign the vendor one, that's good.
I just wanted to let people know, people have asked what, my term will end at the end of March, but I was offered, I just accepted a position as Director of Education and Public Programming with the Supreme Judicial Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Wow,
Which
excellent.
was very,
That's nice.
it almost looked like something, the specs that I had written for myself, but what it will be is to try to make, they're headquartered out of the Adams Courthouse, which is in Beacon Hill, in between the State House and City Hall.
It is
Okay,
gorgeous.
It's beautiful inside, so they want to make that kind of a destination location, almost like a JFK library. So my job will be to develop education programs for middle and high school kids,
And
to
then
get
come
them
in.
in there,
Excellent.
and then to develop some exhibit space for the general public, also to get in,
Amazing.
using the many, many major court decisions from Sacco Vanzetti to
Yeah,
gay
oh, yeah.
marriage to
Wow.
hanging the witches
Yeah, that's pretty good.
and stuff, so.
That's exciting.
I'll be starting that at the end of March.
That is fabulous, congratulations.
It'll keep me busy.
Does that put you in line for consideration for a Supreme Court appointment?
I don't think so.
So is that a full-time appointment?
No, it's, because I didn't know, it's part-time, so it's 25 hours a week,
That's still good, though.
roughly 3 days a week.
That's nice. That's nice.
So it'll
I like that.
be, I did not want something full-time.
I bet it comes with parking.
Part-time. No, there's no parking at all in there.
Oh.
So I'll have to take, I'll be a train commuter, I'll take the
Excellent.
Green Line, I'll go from Woodlawn
Oh,
to Park,
okay,
and
okay.
then I'll just walk up.
Oh, sure.
the hill.
Yeah, but that's nice, and that's nice to be able to do something, you know, like 3 days a week is good, you know what I mean?
Well, I
It's
wasn't-
just enough, yeah.
I'm retired, I'm not
Yeah, you
going
don't
back
go
full
back,
time.
yeah, I don't blame
And
you.
isn't the new Park Street station, didn't that just open, didn't they finally
No,
finish that?
it's Government Center that's gonna be open.
Government Center.
Park Street is still ancient.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Government center's supposed to be.
Everything comes in. Yeah, that opens up very shortly, it's all new glass and everything else that they
It
have.
should be really nice.
That'd be nice there.
Congratulations, that's good, that's very.
Okay, anything else? Motion?
I
Okay.
just heard yesterday from the fire chief that one of our crossing guards, retired crossing guards, passed away. Was it?
Mary Sorry?
Yes.
He's there, which, more than
Wonderful.
40
She-
years.
46 years she worked for us, so I think it's a shame that, but she really was a wonderful employee, and I'm sure a lot of kids will remember her fondly over the years. A lot of not so kids anymore. She was there 46 years, probably some of them
A lot
their
of
grandchildren.
time.
Yeah.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
You're watching Medfield TV, community shows.